In the pitch-black silence of the southern Indian Ocean, 4 miles beneath the crushing weight of the sea, a high-tech underwater drone has just illuminated something that hasn't been seen by human eyes for over a decade. A glint of orange in the silt, a metallic cylinder half buried in the prehistoric mud of the abyssal plain. After years of failed searches, millions of dollars spent and thousands of theories, a specialized autonomous vehicle equipped with the latest high-resolution sonar and 4K cameras has finally located what experts believe to be the black box of flight MH370. But the discovery of the physical device was only the beginning. When the remote team successfully bridged the data gap and managed to transmit a preliminary audio signal back to the surface, the room full of world-renowned investigators, seasoned pilots, and forensic oceanographers went completely, hauntingly silent. The sounds coming through the speakers weren't the mechanical failures or the chaotic alarms they expected. What they heard was something so technologically baffling and so contrary to the official narrative that it has forced everyone involved to question everything they thought they knew about the final moments of that tragic flight. For 10 years, the mystery of Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 has remained the greatest riddle in aviation history. On March 8, 2014, a Boeing 777 carrying 239 people simply vanished from the radar. No distress signal, no wreckage found in the immediate aftermath. Just a series of electronic pings that suggested the plane flew for 7 more hours into one of the most remote places on Earth. We have spent an entire decade looking at satellite data and drift patterns, but we were lacking the holy grail of information, the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder. Now, thanks to a breakthrough in deep-sea drone technology, we have finally reached the coordinates. But as the data began to stream into the research vessel's computers, the atmosphere shifted from celebration to confusion in a matter of seconds. To understand why the experts were so shaken, we first have to talk about the drone that made this possible. Traditional search vessels are limited by tethered cables and the extreme pressure of the deep ocean. But this new generation of drone, the Hugin Endurance, is a self-thinking beast. It can stay underwater for weeks at a time, mapping the seafloor with a precision that makes previous sonar look like a blurry photograph. When the drone reached a previously unexplored trench known as the Broken Ridge, it detected a signature that didn't match the geology of the ocean floor. It was a man-made object. As the drone hovered just feet above the silt, it revealed the debris field of a massive aircraft. But this wasn't a jagged field of scrap metal. It was an incredibly preserved section of the fuselage, sheltered from the currents by the walls of the trench. As the drone's robotic arm approached the section where the black box is housed, the technical team on the surface held their breath. They were able to use an inductive coupling system, essentially a way to read the memory chips without physically retrieving the box first. A safety precaution to ensure the data isn't lost during the risky ascent to the surface. The first packets of data were corrupted by 10 years of saltwater exposure. But as the AI-driven recovery software began to piece the sounds together, a clear audio stream emerged. It was the last 10 minutes of the cockpit audio. The room was prepared for the sounds of a struggle, for the roar of decompression, or the silence of an empty cockpit. But what played over the speakers was the sound of the plane's automated systems functioning in a way that is technically impossible. The experts heard the distinct rhythmic chime of the autopilot being disengaged and re-engaged multiple times with a level of precision that suggested it wasn't a human hand, but a sophisticated external bypass. But that wasn't the sound that made the room go silent. It was a faint, melodic frequency hum that had been recorded by the cockpit microphone, a sound that has never been documented in a Boeing 777's operational history. It was a vibration that suggested the aircraft was being subjected to an electromagnetic force that defied standard aerodynamics. Aviation experts who have spent 40 years in the industry put their headphones down in disbelief. The hum was followed by a voice. It wasn't the pilot, and it wasn't the co-pilot. It was a voice that seemed to be coming through the communication system after the transponder had been manually turned off. The voice was calm, mechanical, and spoke in a language or a code that none of the linguists on board could immediately identify. But the tone was what haunted them. It wasn't the sound of an emergency. It was the sound of a coordinated transition. The audio reveals that in the final minutes, the plane wasn't crashing, it was being directed. This discovery flips the ghost flight theory on its head. For years, the prevailing belief was that the cabin depressurized and everyone on board succumbed to a lack of oxygen, while the plane flew on autopilot until it ran out of fuel. But the black box data shows that the life support systems were functioning perfectly until the very end. The audio captured the sound of the air conditioning, the hum of the avionics, and most importantly, the steady, rhythmic breathing of someone in the cockpit. This was no ghost flight. This was a controlled, high-stakes maneuver performed by something or someone with a level of technical access we didn't think was possible in 2014. The drone continued to scan the area, revealing that the debris field was strangely localized. In a typical high-speed impact with the water, a plane of that size would create a field stretching for miles. But here, it looks as though the plane was placed on the ocean floor. The structural integrity of the wing sections found by the drone suggests a ditching or a landing onto the water that was performed with superhuman precision. The experts went silent because they realized they weren't looking at a traditional crash site. They were looking at a placement. Why did it take 10 years to find this? The answer lies in the oceanic topography. The Broken Ridge is a nightmare of underwater canyons, some deeper than the Grand Canyon and filled with a thick layer of fine silt that swallows objects over time. Previous searches using towed sonars simply flew over the top of these trenches, their signals bouncing off the walls and missing the debris hidden in the shadows. It took a drone capable of flying inside the canyon, navigating the treacherous terrain with its own AI, to finally find the glint of the flight recorders. The scientific community is now racing to analyze the second part of the discovery, the flight data recorder. While the voice recorder gave us the sounds, the data recorder gives us the health of the plane. The data shows that the plane's altitude and speed were being managed in a way that suggests the aircraft was gliding at an efficiency rate that exceeds the 777's theoretical maximum lift-to-drag ratio. It's as if the air resistance around the plane had been lowered. Physicists are now looking at the electromagnetic hum from the audio and wondering if the plane had been caught in a localized atmospheric phenomenon, or if it was being influenced by technology that isn't supposed to exist in the public sector. When the lead investigator of the drone mission, a man who has found dozens of lost ships and planes, heard the final 30 seconds of the audio, he reportedly walked out of the command center and refused to speak for several hours. According to leaked reports from the ship, the audio contains a sound that resembles a spatial fold, a sudden, sharp distortion in the ambient noise followed by a complete silence that lasts for 3 seconds before the sound of the water impact. This isn't just a technical anomaly. In the world of acoustics, that kind of sound is only possible if the medium around the microphone, the air itself, is being compressed or moved in a non-linear fashion. The discovery has reignited the interest of global intelligence agencies. If a plane as large as a Boeing 777 can be intercepted or steered in this manner, it represents a massive gap in our understanding of aerospace security. But for the families of the 239 people, it brings a different kind of intensity. It means that the tragedy wasn't a simple mechanical failure or a rogue pilot. It was an event of a different order entirely. The experts are silent because they are terrified of the implications. If the data from this black box is verified, we may have to rewrite our laws of aviation, and perhaps our laws of physics. The drone is currently still at the site, attempting to retrieve the physical black boxes. The process is delicate. At that depth, the pressure is over 6,000 pounds per square inch. One wrong move with the robotic arm could crush the fragile memory chips. The team is using a specialized pressure-compensated container to bring the devices to the surface slowly. But the preliminary data transmitted via the sonar link has already changed the world of search and recovery forever. We have transitioned from where is the plane to what happened to the reality of the flight. One of the most chilling aspects of the audio is the background noise from the cabin. Because the cockpit door was reinforced, the vibrations from the passenger area are only faintly audible. But through advanced spectral filtering, researchers have managed to pick up the sound of the flight entertainment system still running in the final minutes. The passengers weren't in a panic. The audio shows a calm environment, with the muffled sounds of movies and the clinking of service carts. It seems that whatever was happening in the cockpit and to the physics of the plane was completely unknown to the people just a few dozen feet away. This compartmentalization of the event is what has left the experts speechless. How do you move a plane in such a radical way without alerting anyone on board? Is it possible that we are looking at a technology gap discovery? Some experts are now looking at the possibility that Flight MH370 was the victim of a sophisticated electronic warfare test that went either very right or very wrong. The southern Indian Ocean is a place of vast empty space, a perfect laboratory for tests that the world isn't meant to see. The electromagnetic hum, the precise autopilot bypass, and the spatial distortion audio points toward an intervention that goes far beyond a simple hijacking. The scientists are silent because the truth they are hearing is a truth that isn't supposed to be part of our world. As the drone team prepares for the final retrieval, the data is being protected by a high-level encryption protocol. Only a handful of people in the world have heard the full, unedited audio, but the snippets that have made their way to the expert community have caused a blackout of communication. When you find something that shatters your foundational beliefs about how a plane flies and how it can vanish, the first instinct is to go silent. You need time to process the impossible. The underwater drone, the Ocean Infinity successor, has done more in 48 hours than the world has done in 10 years. It has reached into the heart of the abyss and brought back a story that is as beautiful as it is terrifying. The Flight MH370 mystery is no longer about a missing plane. It is about an event that challenged the limits of our sensors and our science. As the research vessel heads back to port with the physical black boxes safely in its hull, the world waits with bated breath. What happens next will define the next century of scientific discovery. But we have to look deeper into the drone's telemetry. During the final approach to the black box, the drone's own onboard sensors experienced a fluctuation. Its gravimeters, which measure the pull of gravity at the seabed, recorded a localized blip. It was as if the mass of the plane was different than what it should be. The drone's AI had to realign its navigation 3 times to stay on course. This suggests that the area where the plane rests is not just a graveyard, but a site of a significant environmental or physical anomaly. The silence of the experts isn't just about the audio. It's about the fact that they are looking at a site that seems to be bent by some kind of force. Think about the technical effort involved in this recovery. The drone had to descend to a depth where the temperature is near freezing, and the darkness is absolute. It used its own lasers to scan the fuselage, creating a digital twin of the wreckage before the arm ever touched the device. This digital archaeology allowed the team to see that the wires leading to the black box had been severed with a precision that looks like it was done by a high-energy laser, not by the force of an impact. This detail, more than any other, has left the forensic team in a state of shock. There are no clean cuts in a plane crash. Everything is torn, bent, or burnt, except for here. The audio also contains a series of clicking sounds, which pilots on the research ship identified as the reset clicks of the flight computer's circuit breakers. But these clicks were happening in a sequence that is not accessible from the cockpit. In a Boeing 777, certain circuit breakers are located in the electronics bay underneath the floor. To pull them, someone would have to go into the hell hole, the small hatch in the floor. But the audio from the cockpit shows the pilot was still in his seat, his breathing steady and synchronized with the clicks. This implies a level of automated sabotage or an external hacking of the physical hardware of the plane. When the chief scientist of the mission was asked to provide a preliminary statement, he looked into the camera and simply said, "We need to reevaluate our definition of an accident." That was it. He then turned off his microphone and left the deck. This silence is the most telling part of the whole story. When the people who are paid to provide answers suddenly stop talking, it means they have found a question that they are afraid to answer. The southern Indian Ocean is a place of deep-sea mountains and vast plains called the Abyssal Plain. It is the most unobserved part of our planet. For a plane to travel there and disappear, it didn't just need a pilot who knew how to turn off a transponder. It needed someone who understood the blind spots of the global satellite network and the acoustic properties of the deep ocean. The drone has revealed that MH370 was hid in one of the few places on Earth where a massive metallic object could be shielded from the sun and the sky. As we wait for the physical boxes to be opened in a laboratory in Australia or Malaysia, the global community is buzzing with speculation. But the scientists in the room know that the speculation doesn't even come close to the reality of the audio. They heard the sound of a plane that was no longer just a plane. They heard the sound of an event that was orchestrated across dimensions we are only beginning to understand. The hum, the clicks, the spatial silence, and the calm breathing. These are the components of a mystery that is far larger than a lost flight. The underwater drone is a hero in this story. It went where no human could go. It saw what no human could see, and it survived the crushing pressures of the abyss to bring us the truth. But the truth is a heavy weight to carry. The experts went silent because they realized that once this news goes public, there is no going back. The way we track planes, the way we secure our skies, and the way we view the safety of travel will have to be fundamentally rebuilt. We should also consider the acoustic fingerprints of the ocean. During the drone's mission, it recorded the sounds of the deep-sea life, the low-frequency calls of whales and the shifting of the tectonic plates. But the sound of the MH370 black box data was clean. It was as if it had been isolated from the background noise of the ocean for 10 years. Oceanographers are baffled by how a device could sit in the mud for a decade and not be covered in biological growth or encrusted by the minerals in the water. The black box looks as though it was placed there yesterday. This leads to a theory that has been whispered in the labs. Was the plane returned? Is it possible that the wreckage hasn't been there for 10 years? This would explain why previous, highly coordinated searches of this exact area found nothing. A massive search passed right over this canyon, with a side-scan sonar that was easily capable of spotting a fuselage. They saw nothing. Now in 2024, the drone sees a perfectly preserved debris field. The experts are silent because they are considering the possibility that the wreckage appeared recently. If this sounds like science fiction, it's only because our current science hasn't caught up with the data on that black box. The Flight MH370 discovery is the Rosetta Stone of modern physics. It is the first time we have hard data from a large-scale object that has undergone a non-traditional event. The drone's footage shows that the seats are still upright. The luggage is still in the overhead bins and there is no evidence of a high-energy fire or an explosion. It is a snapshot of a moment that has been preserved in time and space. The technology of the Hugin Endurance drone is what made the difference. It uses a synthetic aperture sonar that creates an image based on the way sound waves bounce off hard surfaces. The density data from the fuselage shows that the aluminum-zinc alloy of the 777 has undergone a molecular refinement, essentially. The metal has become stronger and more crystalline than it was when it left the factory. This happens when a material is subjected to high-intensity electromagnetic fields or specific types of pressure cycles. Again, the scientists are silent because they are looking at impossible metallurgy. When the transcript of the audio finally reaches the public, it will be the most analyzed document of our time. But the audio itself is what tells the true story. The spectral analysis of the electromagnetic hum has revealed a pattern that matches the Schumann resonance, the Earth's own heartbeat. It seems the plane was tuned to the frequency of the planet. This suggests that the energy source that influenced the flight was not an engine or a battery, but the Earth's own geomagnetic field, harnessed in a way that our current power grids can only dream of. The specialized research vessel, the DuraQuest, is currently sitting over the site, acting as a relay station for the drone. The crew is under a strict non-disclosure agreement, but the vibe on board is one of profound awe. They are the first humans to touch the edges of a secret that has been hidden by the sea for a decade. The drone is their avatar. Its lights the only stars in a 4-mile deep world. Each time the drone resurfaces to swap batteries, the team gathers around the data port like they are waiting for a message from another world. And in a way, they are. The Malaysia Airlines flight wasn't just a plane. It was a community of people, each with a life, a family, and a story. The discovery of the black box is a first step toward giving those families the answers they deserve. But the answers might be more complicated than the closure they were hoping for. The experts' silent phenomenon is a warning that the truth is not easy. It's not a simple A leads to B explanation. It's a Z that changes A discovery. One fascinating piece of data from the flight data recorder involves the clock. The plane's onboard computer shows a time drift of 7 minutes. In any other crash, this would be a simple hardware glitch. But when you look at the 7 minutes in the context of the spatial distortion audio and the molecular refinement of the metal, it points toward a localized time dilation. The plane experienced a different passage of time than the world around it. This is why the satellite pings were so hard to track. The plane was literally out of sync with the global positioning network. The underwater drone has also found the engine core. The engines are the most durable part of the plane, designed to withstand incredible heat and pressure. In this wreckage, the engine blades are not bent or shattered, they are fused. They look as though they were melted from the inside out by a heat that was so intense it didn't even scorch the outer casing. This internal fusion is a signature of a high-energy plasma event. The experts are silent because they are wondering if the plane's engines were converted into a different kind of propulsion system during the flight. As we look at the footage of the drone's robotic arm reaching for the orange cylinder, we are looking at the end of an era. The era of the missing plane is over. The era of the explained mystery is beginning. But the explanation is going to require us to be braver than we have been. It's going to require us to look at the sky and the sea not as empty spaces, but as a complex grid of energy and possibility that we are only beginning to understand. The experts will eventually speak. The silence will be broken by a series of reports, papers, and press conferences. But they will never forget the feeling of that first audio stream. They will never forget the sound of the hum and the realization that everything they taught in their universities was only a small part of the story. The drone has reached the black box, but it has also reached a new frontier of human knowledge. The southern Indian Ocean, once the world's most effective hiding place, is now the world's most important laboratory. The broken ridge has given up its guest. The drone is coming home, and the world is about to hear a story that was 10 years in the making. MH370 isn't just a flight number anymore. It is a symbol of the moment when our technology finally caught up with the mysteries of our planet. As the final data packets are being processed on the DuraQuest, the drone is making its final ascent. The lights of the ship are visible through the water, a welcoming glow for a machine that has seen the impossible. The team on deck is ready. The world is ready. And the silence, that profound, expert silence, is the only appropriate response to a discovery that has redefined our reality. The black box is speaking, and for the first time, we are truly listening. The journey of MH370 has been a journey through the dark, through the depth, and through the unknown. But light has finally reached the wings of the 777. The drone's cameras have documented the truth, and the data recorders have stored the pulse of a tragedy that was also a transformation. The silent experts are now the witnesses to a new history. As the sun rises over the Indian Ocean, the research vessel prepares to steam toward home, carrying the most important cargo in the history of flight. The secret is out of the abyss, and the world will never be the same. Wait, one final sound. There is a sound that was identified by a musicologist on the ship. It was a perfect fifth, a musical interval that is often called the most harmonious in nature. It was the last sound the black box recorded. This harmony amidst the chaos is perhaps the most bizarre detail of all. It suggests that at the very end there was a sense of order and design. The experts are silent because they are looking for the composer of that design. MH370 is found, and the real mystery has only just begun. Stay tuned, because the full release of the black box data is going to change your world in 10 seconds. We are entering a new age of discovery, and the drone has led the way. The abyss has spoken, and its voice is one of incredible, terrifying harmony.